Hey, welcome back to the channel. So today we are talking about careers and specifically talking about what I would do differently if I was to restart my career today. What I didn't understand earlier on when I first started was that competence without intention will quietly cost you years. And so again, being intentional and having clear goals with your career, I wish I would have came into it with that in mind. But I don't regret my career, but I definitely would not build it in the same way. So in this video, I'm going to be sharing what I would be doing differently. One of the things that I would be doing differently, I would choose skills that age well, not just roles that sound cute. Earlier in my career, young, dumb kid, I cared a lot about how my job looked. The title, the organization, whether it sounded impressive when I said it out loud. What I didn't think through enough, though, was what can I take with me if this role disappeared? And if I was starting over, I would focus on skills that travel, the things that I would be able to get out of that organization, what trainings and offerings the organization provided, so that way I can make sure I'm taking advantage of those. I would say probably the main things that I would focus on earlier in my career would be things like strategy, writing and communication, facilitation, systems thinking. I didn't pick up systems thinking probably until like the last, honestly, I would say around 2020, when everything was happening around that time. That's when I began trying to figure out how can I make my job easier so that way I can focus on higher level tasks. But definitely skills that I would have taken to earlier. But I would also say that for a good example of this, how it actually plays out in the real world is, instead of just being the person that gets things done, I would have focused more so on asking the strategy of the why behind it, especially with, I've always had great bosses and supervisors who would kind of let me in behind the curtain, if you will. And so asking better questions of people who mentored me so I can get a better understanding of the why, the strategy, the decision making, the data that goes behind things. I wish I would have asked better questions when I was younger. But I will say again, when it comes to layoffs happen, priorities shift, and at least having the skills will give you the leverage to level up in your next career opportunity. Another thing that I would have done earlier in my career is keeping a portfolio of the work that I did. There were so many different things that I was doing in my internship, and then also even as I started off in my career. At that point, it was in government. But keeping track of all the different things that I was doing, because I was doing technical writing, I was writing like full-scale reports, I was doing research, a lot of branding and marketing, flyer design, graphic design, even talent as far as being like on TV and doing little TV spots within government as well. So better ways of capturing that in a portfolio, and then also distilling what I was specifically doing, like what each piece, what skill set that really highlighted. So then that way, again, in the future, depending on where I wanted to go in my career, then I would have been able to take the relevant pieces and easily like have it for either upload in an applicant database system or whatever the case may be. I would probably say middle of my career, probably like more so around 2020, honestly, a little bit before that, I would say. That's when I started beginning to try and collect all the different pieces that I was working on, all the different projects and teams and different things I belonged to. And I wish I would have done that earlier, because that took so long to do. And just even in a matter of a year, it's amazing how even in the span of 365 days, you forget come September what you did in January of that year, because things are moving so quickly. So let alone if you've done things several years ago, mind you. So I would say definitely, if you are beginning your career, go ahead and collect that body of work now. Start now collecting that, because that would be so beneficial for you for your next career. Another thing that I would stop doing earlier in my career, I would say, is I would stop romanticizing burnout. I really thought at that time exhaustion meant that you was doing something right. That if I was tired, I was really committed to the cause, or if I was stretched thin, I was just really ambitious. And it rings true back then, and it still rings true now. But meanwhile, what that meant is I was checking emails after hours, saying yes to just one more thing, feeling guilty when I rested. And there was just a toxic series of things I was picking up that now I am beginning to unlearn. And if I was starting all over, I'd understand that a lot sooner. That burnout is just not a career strategy. It's not sustainable. But it doesn't make you lazy. Rest specifically doesn't make you lazy. Boundaries don't make you difficult. And sustainability is not a lack of ambition, but it does make you a better, well-rounded employee to be able to withstand the ebbs and flow within an organization and a company, especially during those times where you need the high energy and the times where you can just sit back and really understanding those things and not carrying it to the nth degree, I would say. Another thing that I would do differently is I would get clearer about what I want and what I don't want in my career. And this is something like, I don't want to be on call forever. I don't want the urgency to define my value. I don't want to be the fixer in every room. And really just understanding what I'm expecting out of my career versus what's actually going on in my current career. And I would say for me, I didn't gain this clarity until 2020, and that was only because of the way work had shifted. Before then, I always just thought a job was a job. You go into the office, you put in your 8 to 5. It was what it was. But in a way, what happened in 2020 was the best thing to happen career-wise for me, because it opened up my eyes to see how the other side, how other people are working and still making their life fit within work, or actually making work fit within their life. And so from then on, since 2020 onwards, I'm thinking, my thought has been, how can I shift and make work align with the life that I want to live? And I wish I would have had that insight or that knowledge about how that could have worked a lot earlier in my career, like back in the early 2000s, mid 2010s. If I had that back then, I totally would have been more so striving for at least a hybrid or remote work situation. So that way it can still enable me to live the life that I really wanted to live. But again, for something like that, that wasn't until I actually experienced hybrid and remote work that I realized, okay, I can do this, and this actually makes work a lot more enjoyable for me. But whatever it is in your career that you're looking to do, just again, making sure it aligns what you're actually doing, because you can have the goals written on paper, but if you're not actively auditing yourself, I would probably say maybe like once a year, just to make sure that you're on track with whatever your career goals are. Another thing that I would do differently is I would invest in my peers, not so much more the supervisors and mentors and directors and things, but more so focusing on the people that I'm kind of in the trenches with, because you never know, referrals and promotions don't just come from your supervisors or directors or people above them. It can sometimes come from your actual colleagues, the people that you work with. And so it's really important to really invest in those people. And I will say earlier in my career, I was just really a department of or a division of 2 people. So I really didn't have anyone else to build relationships with except people outside of my division. But I probably would have realized that a lot sooner, that I need to make connections with other people, and connections, like real meaningful connections, not just transactional. That's the biggest thing that, if you're starting your career, understand the difference between transactional and really true, authentic relationships with people. And that's what I really would have focused on, is just building those organizational relationships within the company, and then even the people who are adjacent to the organization as well, because you never know when these people are going to be in the rooms, the right rooms, and they start just talking about you, your skill set, how you're pleasant to work with. Though they're planting seeds in your name, and sometimes those seeds sprout into great plants and opportunities and promotions and projects. And so again, you never know. So I always say my motto is always be nice to everyone, because you don't know who they're connected to. And it doesn't cost you to be nice and cordial people. So all that being said, something definitely I would have done earlier on in my career. Another thing that I would do differently is I would treat my energy like it's expensive. Note that not my time, but my energy. And if I was starting over, I'd pay attention sooner to things like which tasks drain me every time that I do them. Where am I performing instead of producing? And there are some points in your job where you do have to put on a whole performance. It's just the nature of the job depending on where you work. But I would more so focus on what things am I doing to actually produce results and things of that nature. I would also try and figure out what am I doing out of obligation versus alignment, because I would say again at the beginning of your career, you're probably doing a lot of things just because you're trying to prove that you're competent, that you're worth something, that you are a good team player. But there comes a certain point where it's like, okay, you know your stuff, you're not new to this, you're true to this at this point, and let me actually do the work that I was paid to do. And another thing that I would stop doing is I would stop waiting to feel confident before making moves. And I would say this is still something I'm working my way through, where it's like, as long as I have like 50 to 60% of the information, I need to move on it, because many times I'm not going to learn more information about a topic until I'm actually in the throes of working through the process of whatever it is that I'm working on. And so realizing that a lot younger and earlier in my career, confidence especially just comes from doing things, by being seen, learning new things. You're not getting it right on the first try, but you're still going through with it, and you just refine as you go. And so I think that's what confidence really looks like, just jumping in head first. I have an idea what this is about, but we're going to find out in the process, and we'll adjust and pivot as we need. And so I think that's where I would have been a little bit more adventurous, even with my career in general. Like, I probably would have went into some different career fields, perhaps, knowing that, but I felt like I had to be the expert in everything before I can make that turn or that pivot into something new. And yeah, if I was earlier in my career, I probably would just jump in head first and figure it out later in life. And so it's really important, especially when things are aligning. You just got to jump for it. You just got to go with it and figure it out as you go. All right. So that is all I have for you today. Today's affirmation, let's see. I would say I move with intention, protect my energy, and most of all, trust myself to design what comes next. All right. So my name is Monie. I create content around burnout, entrepreneurship, careers, and all the things in between. And content is organized on a playlist on my channel page, so go check that out if you want to see different content there. But thanks for joining me in this video, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.